As a leader, have you struggled to get a 360-degree or 3D view of issues to help you make better decisions? Then this video will help you. In Matthew E. May's book, Winning the Brain Game, he talked about 7 fatal flaws of thinking, and I'm going to talk about 2 today, among some other mindsets. So his first one he talked about, let's set a scenario first. And that is you've gathered together with your board of directors and you have a complex problem to solve or a complex decision to make. You go around the room and you hear from everybody in the room, and there's an intern in the room and you figure, what the heck, let's let them show their stuff, see if they have any ideas. They share a surprising perspective with you and then tell you it was from YouTube. They'd seen a YouTube video on it. And what would be the response of your board of directors, of your senior leaders to somebody saying the solution came from YouTube? My guess is they would probably laugh. This is what you call NIH or not invented here. Now, a very famous leader, the leader of P&G, A.G. Lafley, came up with a great solution for this, which he called a PFE, or proudly found elsewhere. What he did is he said, going forward, fully 50% of our new products must come from outside sources. So there's one example. So I call it seek outside solutions. So if you want to cure insider's dogma, click here and watch this. Another fatal flaw in Matthew E. May's book is called self-censoring. And that is when you doubt yourself. So you have an idea, but it just seems kind of too dumb, too simple, too expensive, too complex. So you just don't share it. Now, the fix that Matthew E. May talks about is called self-distancing. That is, you imagine that you are sharing this, that this is somebody else's idea. So it's not yours. You're self-distancing psychologically, or you use third-person pronouns, not I, me, my, but he, him, his, or your name, to get an outside perspective, a further perspective, and share that idea, bring it out into the light of the world where other people can see it. So if you want to fix self-censoring, click here and watch this. But Daniel Kahneman, in his book Noise, talks about another strategy, and the strategy he talks about is delayed disclosure. That is, let everybody come to their own conclusion privately and only later share each other's perspective, where they can debate and question and challenge and agree whatever's going to happen. But by delaying disclosure, you're not biased by the other individuals. So another one is also called anonymous disclosure. And this is, I'm going to call it mine, but I'm certain it's done by others as well. And if you want to learn how to brainstorm better by using these kind of techniques, click here to learn how to brainstorm better. So really, this comes down to seeking outside and naive perspectives from, and this is actually the second one, I guess. Sorry. The other one is seeking outside perspectives from naive parties. The first one was internal and close. Now this is external. So you're seeking outside perspectives from people who know nothing about it and don't have a stake, but are obviously qualified to speak on the topic, who understand the topic. So altogether, these 2 broad categories we're discussing here are both broad generative mindsets, and both are equally useful. One is the inside and close-up view. That is somebody who has intimate personal experience, understanding of the context and the details of the issue or the project. Now, an interesting example that came up in some business book I listened to was talking about how some outsiders came to help an African village become self-sufficient. So they planted some tomatoes, proudly saying we're assuming they were going to introduce agriculture. And the locals basically laughed and said, we don't have agriculture here. The outsiders thought they were being closed-minded, doing the NIH thing, when in fact, what happened was, as the tomatoes reach that beautiful ruby red and they're ready to pick, and they're going to do this big ceremony to prove that agriculture is a good thing to help these people become self-sufficient. But when they went out to do this ceremony, all the tomatoes plants were trampled and all the tomatoes were gone. What the outsiders didn't know, that the locals did know, was that hippos like eating fresh produce. So the hippos came out of the river or the lake or wherever they were, ate the tomatoes and left, which is why there was no agriculture there. It wasn't ignorance. In fact, it was knowledge. So the inside perspective, context, history is very, very valuable. Let's flip this around, because the other one, the distant outside 30,000 foot view, which is emotionally detached from a naive outsider, like the Westerners that tried to help with the agriculture in the first example, there's this probably urban legend about NASA wanting to make a space pen, and if they were willing to pay virtually any amount of money to have a pen that would work in zero gravity, write upside down, never clog, never stop writing, write in extreme cold temperatures. And then this outsider went, have you tried a pencil? Which would meet all those criteria immediately for exactly zero cost. So the outsider's perspective is equally powerful. So I want to give one quick more example, and that is a personal example where after Tohoku, I spoke with a Japanese man who was a computer programmer and developer. And he said that he wanted to figure out a way to give money for essentials to people in emergency relief situations so they could purchase stuff. If they couldn't get at money or whatever, they could purchase emergency items that they needed, essentials for life. But he wanted to use like a complex algorithm and blockchain to make sure what they're buying, so that it would basically prove they're buying essentials and not frivolous things with the money. And that way they didn't have to handle money and everything. I said, why don't you just give them cash and then have them photograph and email you the receipt? I didn't know anything about the project, but in a moment, I came up with a simpler solution that would work instantly, and everybody in Japan has a cell phone, down to like 8-year-olds. So that would solve the problem. Because I was a naive outsider, I wasn't too close to it. Neither of these perspectives is more valid than the other. This is really what it comes down to. And this is an idea I've talked about before that I call basically nothing is everything. Many gurus try to give you that universal solution that solves everything that they know, and you got to buy it from them. It just doesn't exist. Life is more complex than that. Reality is more complex than that. So I would love it if you could please comment which mindset you tend to use when making leadership decisions. Inside out, outside in, or both. That's it for Crush It Club, episode 81, Inside Out and Outside In. My name is Tim B. Green. Bye for now.